my name is Ethan. And what I'm about to tell you isn't just a story, it's the truth of a man who once walked away from everything that mattered, and then spent years trying to earn it all back. If you're listening, just know, these words aren't easy to say. But maybe, by the end, you'll understand why I had to. There was a time when I was ashamed of my own wife. She struggled to speak clearly, couldn't cook the way I liked, and had never even gone to school. She was a simple, quiet woman from a small town. And me? I was full of ego and blind ambition. When I moved to the city, I married someone else, someone modern, educated, polished. Then I called my first wife and told her, "You can go ahead and divorce me, marry someone else if you want. I won't stop you." But she didn't say a word. No tears. No fight. Just silence. Years went by. One day, I returned to my hometown. What I saw left me frozen. The rundown house I once walked away from had turned into a large, beautiful home. Respected town elders came to meet me, not with anger, but with joined hands and humble voices. They sat down near me and said, "Please, can you ask your wife to help us? Our kids are in trouble. Some are in jail, some don't have electricity or clean water. She's the only one who can help." I couldn't believe it. These people, leaders, elders, were coming to her for help. The same woman I once dismissed as unworthy. And then I saw her. She walked toward me with calm steps and quiet confidence. I couldn't even lift my eyes to meet hers. Shame had wrapped itself around me. I overheard her gently telling an old man, "Don't worry, I'll get you the best doctors. You're going to be okay. Just hold on." Then another man, someone I had known since childhood, looked straight at me and said, "Son, I don't have much time left. You've cared for me like a son, but I have one final wish. Please marry my daughter, Olivia. She's a talker, yes, but when I'm gone, she'll have no one." That man was Uncle Henry, not just my father's best friend, but the man who raised me after my dad passed. He was family. He gave me love when I had nothing. Still, I hesitated. Olivia was a small-town girl. I had dreams, big city, big future, and I wanted someone who fit into that world. Just as I was about to say no, Uncle Henry had a violent coughing spell, struggling to breathe. He folded his hands one last time, and in that moment, something in me broke. I nodded. "Okay, Uncle. I'll do it." He took a deep breath, like his heart finally let go. And the next day, I married Olivia. The wedding was small. A few close people, a quiet ceremony. Olivia looked happy. Her dad looked proud. And me? I felt nothing. A few days later, Uncle Henry passed away. Olivia was heartbroken. She had no one left now, just me. And deep down, we both knew the truth. I hadn't married her for love. I married her out of guilt, out of duty. That's why I couldn't even look her in the eye. One day, she found a letter tucked inside her father's journal. I didn't know about it until much later. But those words changed her. He had written, "My dear daughter, I chose Ethan because I want you to be safe. He will protect you from the harshness of this world." Those words shook her, but they didn't crush her. She didn't break. She rose. She decided she would never be seen as weak again. That one day, people wouldn't just know Ethan, they'd know Olivia. And while she was rising, I was falling apart. Something deep inside me had started to shift, but I was too late to accept it. A promise made at someone's deathbed doesn't guarantee a lifetime of love. That was the truth I couldn't face. One night, when the town was fast asleep and even the wind felt still, I slipped out the back door. I tied some cash into a small pouch around my waist and walked away. No goodbyes. No second thoughts. Except, she knew. Olivia opened her eyes. She saw me leave. But she didn't stop me. She didn't say a word. Her silence said it all. He doesn't belong here anymore. It hadn't even been a month since Uncle Henry's funeral. But I had already decided. This isn't living, I told myself. This is a cage. I want more. I want something that's mine. I didn't feel sorry for Olivia. Her quiet didn't move me. I told myself I owed nothing to anyone. I thought I was running toward freedom. But in truth, I was only running away from myself. To me, Olivia had always been just a responsibility. And I thought I had fulfilled it. That was it. A few days later, I stepped off a train into the chaos of the city, crowded sidewalks, leaking buildings, the smell of smoke and sweat hanging in the air. But even in all that mess, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. I found a tiny room to rent in the slums. The roof leaked every time it rained, and the walls stayed wet. It was barely enough to lie down, but it was mine. For the first time, I felt like I had control over my life. I knocked on door after door looking for work. Eventually, someone gave me a job at a warehouse, loading and unloading boxes from trucks. From 7 in the morning till nightfall, I hauled heavy sacks on my back. Every night, I'd drop onto an old mattress that smelled of mold and defeat. My bones ached, but I didn't complain. There was a strange peace in the struggle. Like I was chasing something, even if I didn't know what it was. One evening, after another long shift, I stopped at a roadside tea stall. That's where I met Ashley. She was bold, straightforward, the kind of woman who said exactly what she felt. Tough on the outside, but her eyes carried softness. We ran into each other a few more times, short chats over paper cups, half smiles, awkward glances. And slowly, those small moments started meaning more than I expected. One day, she looked at me and asked, "Could you live without me?" I didn't hesitate. I said, "I couldn't even live with myself until I met you. You make me feel whole." A few weeks later, we got married. I didn't tell her anything about my past. No talk of Olivia, no talk of Uncle Henry. I buried that entire chapter like it never existed. Life with Ashley was good, for a while. We laughed. Cooked together. Held hands like couples in love. But slowly, it all started to fade. The same old problems came back. The same tired routine. The same emptiness I had tried to run from. Then one day, Ashley left. There was no shouting, no fight, just one sentence. She said, "You talk like you've figured it all out, Ethan. But the truth is, you're the empty one. How can you complete someone else, when you're not even whole yourself?" She wasn't wrong. I had no degree. No charm. No high-paying job. Just a tired body and a soul that barely had a voice left. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply folded my hands and watched her walk out. And just like that, I was alone again. Meanwhile, in that village I had walked away from, Olivia was building something of her own. She didn't cry when I left. Not a single tear. That woman, she had a spine made of steel. People whispered behind her back. Said I had run away. That I stayed only because her father was alive. She heard it all and never said a word. But she made herself a promise that she would never live in anyone's shadow again. Not her father's. Not mine. It's strange. I only started thinking about Olivia when Ashley's words cut deep. When her voice got sharp. That's when I remembered Olivia never raised hers. She never complained. Not once. There was something powerful about her silence. Something I hadn't understood until it was too late. Then came the night it rained hard. Ashley stood at the door with her suitcase and said, "I'm done." And she left. I sat there, on that same moldy mattress, under the same cracked ceiling, surrounded by the same four walls. But now, the silence felt louder than ever. I looked around and saw my own emptiness in everything, in the mirror, in the corner of the room, in the cold plate of food I hadn't touched. I had built this life. I had called it freedom. But now, it felt like a prison. Still, I kept going to work. Not because I had a dream, but just to survive. Every day was the same: iron crates, dusty boxes, shouting supervisors. 10, sometimes 12 hours a day. My back ached. My heart ached more. And at night? No one waited for me. No one asked how I was doing. Then one day, my manager pulled me aside and said, "We're cutting wages. There's not enough work." It felt like the floor was slipping out from under me. Rent. Food. Even a cup of tea, everything felt out of reach. Some nights, I went to bed hungry. Not because I was strong, but because I had no choice. I was just tired. And for the first time, I really began to wonder, had I walked away from a prison? Or had I abandoned the only real love I ever had? There were nights I went to bed with nothing but water in my stomach. Sometimes, I'd stretch 2 or 3 days on nothing but stale bread. But then came the stretch that nearly broke me, 3 full days without a single bite of food. On the 4th day, I still tried to go to work. Every step toward the warehouse felt heavier than the last. My legs gave out beneath me. Everything blurred. Voices echoed in my ears, faint and far away, and then, darkness. I collapsed in the middle of the street like a piece of trash swept aside. Someone shouted, "He's still breathing. Pick him up." I felt hands grab my shoulders. Water splashed against my face. But I was too far gone to move. My body had shut down. My chest rose in tiny, shallow breaths. My stomach clenched in pain. I couldn't even open my eyes. They rushed me to the nearest government hospital. No questions. No paperwork. Just a stretcher and fluorescent lights above my head. The place reeked of bleach and sickness. Curtains stained with God knows what surrounded me. Machines beeped nonstop. Voices yelled down the hallway. Even half-conscious, I could feel the fatigue hanging over everything. A nurse walked over, eyes tired, hair pulled back in a messy bun. She didn't waste time. "Starvation case," she told the ward assistant. "He hasn't eaten in 4 days." The man scoffed. "These laborers kill themselves working but don't eat right." The nurse paused. Her voice softened. Her voice was calm. Steady. But those words cracked something inside me. That night, the hospital was quiet. Just machines humming. Curtains swaying in the breeze. Somewhere down the hall, someone coughed. A baby cried. But in my mind, only one face kept appearing, Olivia. Her silence. Her strength. And my stupidity. I whispered into the darkness, if only I'd listened, if only I had understood her silence. But if only doesn't bring back time. I had thrown it all away. And all I had left were echoes of regret. Still, life had given me a choice. I could stay down. Or I could stand up. The next morning, when the nurse came in with my medication, I asked her, "Where am I?" She raised an eyebrow. "You seriously don't remember? This is General Hospital, Mumbai." I nodded slowly. Right. Then I said, more to myself than her, "I need to remember more than that. I need to remember who I am." And that man in the mirror, hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, stubble grown wild, he wasn't done yet. He was about to begin again. After I was discharged, I didn't return to that moldy, broken room. I didn't want to fall into that same cycle of misery again. Instead, I found a quiet bench near the station. I sat there for hours, staring at the lines on my palms, like they might tell me how I got here, or where to go next. And then, I made a choice. Enough. Enough of this life. It was time to go back. Not to who I used to be. But to the place where people lived with open hearts and simple dignity. To the woman I left behind, the one I never truly saw for who she was. The next morning, I packed a few old clothes into a bag. I folded the hospital's unpaid bill and stuffed it into my back pocket. I took one last look around, and walked toward the train station. The train was already there, waiting for me, like it knew I was coming. As it pulled forward, all I had with me was silence. But this time, that silence didn't feel empty. It felt like a beginning. Something I should have done, a long time ago. As the train rattled down the tracks, I sat quietly by the window. Sometimes, I watched the trees blur into each other. Other times, I just closed my eyes and let the memories come. Uncle Henry's cane tapping against the floor, the smell of evening meals, dusty childhood games in the front yard, and Olivia's eyes, always calm, always filled with unspoken questions. It all played out in my mind like an old film reel. When the train finally pulled into the station and the conductor's voice crackled through the speakers, something inside me tightened. My chest felt heavy, and yet, my feet moved on their own. I stepped off the train, and into a past I thought I had buried. The village looked the same, narrow dirt roads, dry grass swaying in the breeze, that quiet rhythm you can only find in places where life moves slow. But the people? They were different. Kids ran ahead and pointed. "Hey! That's Ethan. Ethan's back." I kept walking, and suddenly, the whole village turned to look. But what stopped me in my tracks wasn't their attention, it was their eyes. These were the same people who once whispered behind my back. Who once saw me as nothing. Now, they looked at me with respect. Not pity. Not sarcasm. But quiet, genuine respect. "Welcome back, Ethan," an older man said, placing his hand over his heart. "It's good to see you. Bennett's son has come home." I nodded. Couldn't find words. It was like they finally saw me. Like I actually mattered. I walked on, toward the old house. My childhood home. The place where Uncle Henry once cleared his throat every morning. Where Olivia's footsteps had filled empty hallways with life. The wooden porch creaked as I stepped on it. The door was still cracked at the bottom. The same dust still danced in the corners. I pushed the door open slowly. A wave of memories swept in with the air. "This," I whispered, "this was always my real home." I walked straight to Uncle Henry's old bedroom. It still smelled faintly of tobacco and old books. The same faded sheet hung behind the bed. And pinned to it, something I hadn't expected. One of Olivia's handkerchiefs. I froze. That tiny piece of fabric carried more weight than I could explain. Just then, someone knocked. It was the village goldsmith, older now, his back more bent, his voice gentler. He folded his hands in greeting and said, "You did right coming back, son. This house needs to breathe again. Bennett gave this village everything. Will you carry that forward?" I looked down at the floor. I didn't know what to say. I didn't feel worthy. Then another man walked in, someone from the village council. He held out a sealed envelope and said, "Olivia left this for you. She asked us to give it to you, if you ever came back." My hands shook as I opened it. There were only a few words inside, but they hit me harder than anything I'd ever read. "If you ever come back, know this, you will receive the respect I gave up everything for. This house isn't your property, it's your identity. Life doesn't always offer second chances. But when it does, be grateful." I just sat there, reading it again. And again. That woman, the one I ignored, misunderstood, and left behind, had built something out of my absence. She'd turned a broken home into a sanctuary. She'd turned my forgotten name into something people honored. I sat on the floor for a long time. Head down. Hands limp. I couldn't even look at her handkerchief pinned to the wall. The sun dipped low. The village grew quiet. I stepped outside and sat in the open courtyard. The stars came out, one by one. My hands rested on my knees. My eyes stayed fixed on the sky. "I'm home, Uncle," I whispered. "But I'm not the Ethan who ran away. I'm here to become the man you always hoped I would be." And in that stillness, something shifted. Maybe it was just the breeze. Or maybe it was them, listening. Because when I opened my eyes again, the first soft light of morning had touched the edge of the doorstep. The village was waking up. But this time, it wasn't just another day. Something new was coming. And I could feel it. Right outside the gate, someone was waiting. I was still sitting in the courtyard when I heard voices outside the gate. A few young men were talking loudly, full of energy. "She's coming back today. In a government car, with full honors. Even the mayor stands up when she speaks now." I leaned against the wall, trying to see what the noise was about. Something big was clearly happening near the village center. That's when a boy I used to know, barely a teen when I left, came running up, out of breath, grinning. "Ethan! You didn't hear? Olivia is coming back. The whole village is setting up to welcome her." My heart stopped for a second. Olivia? The same Olivia? The girl I left behind without so much as a goodbye? Why now? There's some kind of official inspection, he added. She's a high-ranking officer now. Like a district chief or something. Every word hit me like a punch. I turned away and walked back into the house. Closed the door. But nothing felt quiet anymore. The silence screamed louder than ever. I remembered so clearly, that day she placed a cup of tea in front of me without saying a word. That silence, it wasn't emptiness. It was strength. It was grace. And now I knew, it was love, too. By midday, the entire village looked like a celebration was about to start. Storefronts had fresh paint. Streets were spotless. Right at the main intersection, a massive banner flapped in the breeze. Welcome Officer Olivia Bennett, District Commissioner. I couldn't stop staring at those words. District Commissioner? That same girl who used to wash dishes in a kitchen I barely entered, was now leading an entire region? I didn't know what to feel. Pride? Shame? Maybe both. By evening, the crowd had doubled. A sleek white SUV, draped in official markings, rolled into the village. Police motorcycles rode alongside it. I stood quietly in the shadow of the house's doorway. The car stopped. The door opened. And Olivia stepped out. She was dressed in a sharp white suit, the kind that didn't just look professional, it commanded respect. Her shoulders were squared, her chin held high. Her eyes, steady, calm, fearless. People cheered. Some women came forward to welcome her with flowers. Kids tossed rose petals. Even the same man who once scoffed at our family name now greeted her with folded hands. Officer Olivia, he said, bowing slightly, you've brought honor to this place. We're grateful. She gave a polite smile. But her eyes drifted, not toward the cameras or the crowd. But toward the house. Toward me. Like she knew I was there. Like she felt me watching. And then she spoke, loud enough for everyone to hear. That house, and the ground it stands on, have seen more than just struggle. If I've become someone today, it's because of the faith and strength I once found there. Her voice echoed like a blessing. No one moved. Not the mayor. Not the old shopkeepers. Not even the kids. And me? I couldn't move either. I could have stepped out. Could have gone to her. After all, her last name was still mine. But, what right did I have? I had walked away. Left her to carry it all alone. I thought about those days in the warehouse. About Ashley's cruel words. About hunger and shame and that nurse in the hospital who said, if you're alive, then learn how to live. I didn't chase after Olivia that day. She got back in the car and drove off. But her words, they stayed behind. Like a breeze after a storm. Like hope after silence. That night, I lay under the stars again. She hadn't just passed some exam. She had rewritten her story. Quietly. Powerfully. And what about me? I had no excuses left. I wasn't chasing titles. I wasn't trying to win anyone back. I just wanted to become someone. Not flashy. Not important. Just real. The next afternoon, as the shadows grew long, I sat alone again in the courtyard. A few older villagers showed up. Mr. Adams, the head of the local council, stepped forward and placed an envelope gently on the table beside me. Ethan, he said, with a kind voice, we have a small request. If you could, ask your wife to help us with something. It's important. For all of us. Wife. That word hit different now. I looked down at the envelope. I didn't know what was inside. But I knew this much, my story with Olivia wasn't over. Not yet. I sat there, staring at the envelope long after the villagers had left. I turned it over in my hands, unsure what to expect. But something about it made my chest tighten. And when I finally opened it, I understood why. Olivia, we humbly request that you use your position and influence to help release our 2 boys who are being held at the police station. They're innocent. If you intervene, it can be resolved. We will never forget your kindness. The entire committee. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time. It wasn't just a letter. It was a test. This was the moment I would have to stand in front of the woman I once walked away from, and who now had the kind of power that could change people's lives. The Olivia I remembered, quiet, almost invisible, had become someone no one could ignore. I slipped the letter into my pocket and stood up. Then I walked, step by step, to the old house that was once ours, now transformed into her official residence. On the way, I heard whispers. "Hey, that's Olivia's husband." Even the elders nodded at me with respect. I should have felt proud. Instead, all I felt was the weight of what I had to do. When I reached the door, I paused. Then knocked. The door opened with a soft creak. And there she was. Olivia. Dressed in full uniform. 2 silver stars on her shoulders. Her nameplate shining over her heart. Her eyes calm. Her face gentle. But her voice, it had authority now. Quiet, steady power. I came to talk," I said. My voice barely above a whisper. She didn't say anything. Just stepped aside and opened the door wider, inviting me in. I walked in slowly. Like someone walking into court to confess. The room was spotless. Files stacked neatly. A landline phone sat on the desk. A hot cup of tea, untouched, rested nearby. I placed the envelope on the table. "The village asked me to bring this. It's a request." She opened it. Read it silently. No emotion showed on her face. Then she calmly set it down. "They want a recommendation," she said. And then looked right at me. "What do you think?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. I looked away. I felt like every mistake I'd ever made was reflected in her eyes. I didn't come to explain anything," I said quietly. "Just to deliver the message." She studied me for a moment. Her eyes, once soft, always observing, now asked unspoken questions. "Did you ever ask what I wanted? Did you ever see me as more than a shadow in your life?" I looked down at the floor. I couldn't meet her gaze. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Sorry," she repeated. Her voice was steady, not angry, just firm. "That's what you brought? After all this time?" My throat tightened. "I know it doesn't fix anything. I'm carrying a lot of regret. And I don't know how to put it down." She stood and walked slowly toward the window. Outside, the sun had started to set. The sky turned golden orange. Quiet. Fading. She didn't raise her voice. But her words struck deep. "Do you know how I got here, Ethan?" she said. "It wasn't just hard work. It was your absence. Your silence. The way you looked past me like I didn't even exist." I stood still. Her words were fire. But they didn't burn. They revealed. "I used to sit in bed," she continued. "On your side. Alone. Night after night. And I promised myself, I will rise. Even if I have to rise alone." And I did. She took a breath. "I still remember the day I got my final results. The day I passed. And for the first time in years. I cried. Not out of sadness. But because the weight finally lifted. All those years of silence. All those dreams no one believed in. They finally mattered." She turned and looked at me. Her eyes weren't angry. Just tired. Like someone who had fought the hardest battle of their life and won. And at that moment, I realized. I wasn't just standing in front of Olivia, the officer. I was standing in front of Olivia, the woman I never really saw. And only now was I beginning to understand who she truly was. "Time doesn't wait, Ethan," she said gently. "And what it leaves behind are wounds. Some take years to heal. Some never do." I couldn't respond. My head hung low, and every mistake I'd ever made felt like it was dragging me down by the neck. But Olivia, she didn't judge me. She quietly walked over to the table, pulled out a pen from a small box, and without another word, wrote on the letter, "Action in progress." Then she folded it neatly, slipped it back into the envelope, and handed it to me. "Give this to Patil," she said. Then paused. Her voice softened, "And Ethan?" I looked up. Her eyes met mine as she said, "If you really want forgiveness, then be the kind of man who can carry the weight of his mistakes, not dump it on someone else." That broke me. Tears streamed down my face. I didn't try to hide them. Her uniform. Her strength. The calm in her voice, it wasn't meant to make me feel small. But I did. Because for the first time, I saw how far she had risen, while I stayed stuck in the same spot, blaming the world. I stepped outside. The sun was dipping low, casting the village in warm orange light. And somewhere deep inside, I felt a flicker. A tiny spark. Like maybe, just maybe, a new sun was rising in my own heart. But I knew this wouldn't be easy. This wasn't about walking anymore. It was about walking with honesty. With purpose. That evening, I wandered near the village square without knowing why. The shops were shutting. The noise of the day faded. Workers headed home, tired, dusty, worn. I found a corner to sit in. Just me, an empty bag, sore feet, and a stomach that hadn't eaten properly in 2 days. My pride wouldn't let me ask anyone for help again. And then, I saw it. A few items were lying outside a closed shop, leftovers. And a voice inside me whispered, "No one's watching. Just take something." I looked around. Nothing. I took a step. My hand reached out toward a small phone box. And then, thief. Someone's stealing. Before I could move, 2 men came running. They grabbed me, yanked me, dragged me straight to the police station. No questions. No one asked who I was. In that moment, the world stamped me with one word, thief. The station was another world entirely. The walls smelled of sweat and fear. I was shoved behind cold, rusted bars. My body was weak. My soul, weaker. I leaned back against the wall and closed my eyes. And the memories came rushing in. Uncle's warm hands. Olivia's quiet strength. The old Haveli. The wind by the well. And her. I remembered a day long ago, she was crying outside a store. I saw her. And I walked right past her. I never asked why. I remembered her staying up all night to study, while I drowned in my own ego. Morning arrived slowly. Then came the sound of a white SUV outside. The officers straightened up. And I saw her. Olivia. Calm. Steady. With her badge, her uniform, and those same stars on her shoulder. She walked in. Moments later, a constable came to my cell and unlocked it. "Ethan, come." I stepped out. And there she was. She didn't look angry. She didn't look proud. She just looked at me. "Come," she said. I followed. My legs barely moved. The ground didn't feel real. If it had been anyone else, I might have felt relief. But because it was her, the woman I abandoned, ignored, forgot, all I felt was shame. We got into the vehicle. Neither of us said a word. The car moved slowly through the village. I wanted to look at her. Just once. But I couldn't. She kept her gaze ahead. Not cold. Not angry. Just distant. That silence. It wasn't empty. It was filled with everything I had never noticed about her. Every word I never let her say. Every tear she never let me see. And somehow, in that quiet, I finally heard all of it. When the car stopped outside my old room, I knew. This wasn't just a ride home. It was the moment I finally had to face myself, maybe for the very first time in my life. The car stopped. Olivia opened the door and said quietly, "Get down, Ethan." I froze. My throat tightened. I wanted to say something, anything. But the words just wouldn't come. She didn't wait. She shut the door and drove off. All she left behind was dust and silence. That night, I sat alone in my small room. My hands rested on my lap. I stared at the old clothes hanging on the wall. And I felt broken. Truly, deeply broken. For the first time, I understood what I had really lost. The woman I once treated like a shadow, someone I expected to quietly follow behind, had been a whole, powerful soul all along. She had carried every wound I gave her, without a word. No complaints. No drama. Just silent strength. She took all that pain and turned it into power. In that jail cell? Her eyes? That stillness? It cracked something open in me, something I didn't even know I had locked away. Because now, I finally understood, my crime wasn't trying to steal a phone. It was something far worse. I had stolen someone's dignity. I had crushed her dreams. I ignored her silence, thinking it meant nothing. But that's the kind of crime no judge can convict you for. Only the soul keeps score. The next morning, the sun burned hotter than usual. I sat quietly in a corner of the village square. My hands were blistered from failed work. My face dripped with sweat. But it wasn't the sun that burned me. It was my own shame. My whole life unspooled in my mind like a cruel movie. Uncle Matov's final breath. The look in Olivia's eyes. The word thief. The clanging iron bars. And the most painful scene of all, knowing I couldn't even look myself in the mirror. Later that day, when the crowd had thinned and the village went quiet, I wandered off alone. I ended up beneath a huge peepal tree. Under it sat an old man, maybe a sage, maybe just a man who had seen too much. Long white beard. Simple clothes. A clay cup in his hand. He wasn't looking at me, just staring into the soil, like he was digging for answers without moving a single finger. I started to walk past him. Tired. Empty. But then, his voice stopped me. "Hey, man made of clay," he said. "Hold on. The questions on your forehead are too deep." I froze. How did he know? I turned around, and sat next to him, under the wide, silent branches. "What did you see on my face?" I asked. He didn't even blink. "Nothing on your face," he said calmly. "But I can see what you carry on your shoulders. It's not a bag. It's shame. It's guilt. It's time you've already lost." I looked away. "I've got nothing left," I whispered. "Olivia's gone. My home is gone. My pride, my place in the world, gone. All that's left is this weight in my chest." The old man reached into the dust, picked up a small stone, and placed it in my hand. "Holding this won't help," he said. "It only means something if you have the strength to throw it away." He paused. "Respect is like that too. No one gives it to you because you want it. You earn it. You build it. And self-respect?" He smiled slightly. "It's not something you flash in front of people. It's the light that shows you your own path, especially in the dark." Something shifted inside me. Like blood had started flowing through parts of me that had gone numb. "So what do I do now?" I asked. The sage's voice became still. Quiet. But clear. "You have two choices," he said. "You can carry this burden forever. Let it crush you every day. Or, you can rise above it. Become the kind of man tomorrow's Ethan will be proud of." Tears welled in my eyes. I didn't say anything for a long time. And then finally, I spoke, softly, but stronger than before. "I'll live with dignity. Or not at all. But I won't live like this anymore." The sage raised his hand in blessing. "Go," he said. "You've begged long enough for worth from others. Now go find it within. Drop the weight, not just from your shoulders, but from your soul." That night, something shifted in me. I stopped staring at my pillow before sleep and started looking inside my heart. I tore up all the old papers, the ones filled with excuses. I washed my worn clothes. Folded them carefully. And before the sun even rose, I was ready. I went back to the warehouse. Same spot. Same dust. Same tired walls. But this time, the weight I carried wasn't just physical, it came from deep inside. From my chest. From my soul. I knew the work: loading trucks, stacking boxes, getting sweaty and sore, wasn't glamorous. But I also knew this was where real respect was built. Not the kind you beg for. Not the kind people hand you out of pity. The kind you earn, with your sweat, with your effort, with your silence. I showed up before anyone else. I left after everyone was gone. And every single day, before I left, I cleaned the entire place. No one told me to. I just needed to do it. Some of the guys laughed. "Hey Ethan," they'd joke. "Trying to be the CEO now?" I'd just smile and say, "Not a CEO. Just a man trying to do things right." Weeks went by. Then one afternoon, the warehouse manager waved me over. "You work hard, Ethan," he said. "There's a new delivery company opening up. They need a foreman. If you're interested, I can recommend you." I didn't say anything right away. But inside, something lit up. That offer? It wasn't because of Olivia. It wasn't some charity or favor. It was because of me. Because I had earned it. That night, I sat on the rooftop, under a quiet sky filled with stars. The breeze was cool, like it used to be back then. And I thought of that old man, under the peepal tree. Then I remembered the stone. I reached into my pocket. It was still there, dusty, worn, but unchanged. That tiny stone, once just a symbol of guilt, now felt like something else entirely. Now it felt like a diamond. Because I finally understood, respect doesn't come from your name or your past. It comes from your choices. Your actions. And if those actions are real, even dirt can turn into gold. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "Olivia. I'm not changing to win you back. I'm changing to win myself back. And this time, I'm not stopping." Morning light began to spread across the sky. And maybe, just maybe, that same light was rising inside me too. For the first time in years. I felt truly awake. The wind had shifted. A new kind of chill floated through the air, soft, fresh, like the world itself was ready to begin again. I wasn't the same man anymore. I wasn't the guy who ran when things got hard. Now, I got up before the sun. Even when my body ached, I didn't let my spirit bend. That was my promise to myself. As I worked each day, something began to grow inside me, like a small seed cracking through the earth. It wasn't guilt anymore. It was something stronger. A will to rebuild. A fire to fix what I broke. To earn back the dignity I once tossed aside like it didn't matter. And one day, I knew. It's time. I couldn't just say sorry. I had to live it. So I walked to her office, not the old village building anymore. She was now at the administrative headquarters for the whole district. There was a guard at the gate. He tried to stop me. But I looked him in the eye and said, steady and calm, "I just want to meet her. The woman I never really understood, who understood me better than I understood myself." A few minutes later, the office door opened. She was inside. Olivia. Sitting at her desk, focused on a file. The moment she looked up and saw me, I caught it, that tiny flicker in her eyes. Half surprise, half hesitation. She didn't speak. She just waited. Waited for me to speak first. I stepped in slowly, eyes lowered. "I came to apologize," I said quietly. "For all the times I looked right past you. For not seeing your worth. For walking away from everything you tried to build." She didn't interrupt. She didn't react. She just listened. And then, I stepped forward. Placed something on her desk. It was old. A little torn at the corners. Folded too many times from sitting in my pocket. "This," I said softly, "is a blueprint. For a school." I took a breath. "I want to build it. On my land. For kids like me, kids who never got the chance to learn. I want someone to become what I couldn't." She picked up the paper. Her fingers trembled. She looked at it for a long time, just lines and sketches, but inside those lines, I had poured everything. My regret. My hope. My promise to do better. And then I said, "I want you to be the one to inaugurate it. Because this school? It's not about me. It's your identity. Your dream. Your courage. I didn't create it. I just planted your vision into my soil. She looked up at me. And for the first time in years, what I saw in her eyes wasn't pain. Wasn't anger. Wasn't even sadness. It was something softer. There was still that calm on her face. But this time, it felt softer, like something inside her had finally found peace. She looked at me and said quietly, "Ethan, forgiveness doesn't always come through words. Some mistakes are only washed away with time, with action, with sacrifice." I nodded, my eyes falling to the ground. "That's why I'm here," I said. "To show you, this change in me, it's not just for show. It's real. It came from inside. It's not a performance, it's a promise." And within days, the news spread like wildfire across the village. The same land I once used for farming was now becoming something new. A construction site. Bricks were being laid. Cement mixed. Wood hammered. A school was rising. Kids gathered at the edge of the land, wide-eyed, like their dreams had found roots in real soil. At the front gate stood a brand new sign, Olivia Bennett Academy. When Olivia arrived at the site, the whole village stood in silence, and then broke into applause. She stepped out of the car, and I walked toward her. Not with pride, but with humility. In my eyes, was everything I had once failed to say. I stepped onto a small stage. My voice trembled, but I spoke from the heart. This school is named after the woman who didn't just discover herself, but helped me discover the truth inside me. She never shouted. Never cursed. But through her silence, she gave me the biggest lesson of my life. I looked over and saw her eyes fill with tears. And in that moment, I realized something. Some wounds never heal through words. But when someone owns their failures and truly works to change, they stop being a mistake maker. They become a learner. After the ceremony, the crowd faded away. But Olivia stayed. She looked at me and said softly, "Maybe you really have apologized, Ethan, not with your mouth, but with your choices." I nodded again, gently. "My only wish," I told her, "is that my mistakes never fall on your name. Instead, I hope this school adds something good to your story." She didn't say much. Just gave a quiet nod, and turned to leave. But this time, the sound of her footsteps, it didn't feel heavy. The weight she had carried for so long, it was gone. And for the first time in my life, I felt light. That evening, I sat on the school's front steps, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The sky turned orange, then gold. And inside me, something else began to glow. A kind of light that didn't come from praise. A light that came from doing what was right. I hadn't asked for forgiveness with words. I had lived it. And now, I was ready. I wasn't empty anymore. I had done something. Built something. The next morning, the sky turned from night blue to bright gold. A fresh breeze blew through the village, like the world was finally breathing again. I leaned back against the new school wall, my eyes on the sign, Olivia Academy. The building was simple. Freshly painted. Clean benches. Bright rooms. But every single part of it had been built with honesty. And that big sign at the entrance? That wasn't my idea. It came from them, the village elders, the teachers, the leaders. They had all said the same thing. This school should be named after the girl who didn't just survive, but changed the soul of this whole village. And when the board was placed, I said nothing. I just stood there, silent, watching. Olivia had been told about it. But she hadn't responded. She just showed up the next morning. Stepped out of the car. Quiet as always. But something had changed. A line of children stood at the school gate, waiting, flowers in hand. Their eyes weren't just happy, they were full of hope. Pure, innocent hope. As she walked past them, the kids smiled. Like the future had walked right past them. I stood near the gate, watching her. And in that moment, everything inside me stirred. All the years of regret. All the change. All the rebuilding. It all came together in a single moment. And then, She came close. And our eyes met. No words. No blame. No apology. Just silence. A sacred silence that told me the story had come full circle. She looked at me and asked, her voice soft and steady, "You did all this, in my name?" Her voice wasn't shocked. It was tired. Honest. Real. And I answered. I looked at her and said softly, "This school, it's not just walls and bricks. It's your dream, Olivia." I was just the man who messed up, and then finally learned. She turned her eyes toward the building and replied gently, "This isn't just a school, Ethan, it's the beginning of your new life. And maybe, of ours too." The children came forward with flowers in their tiny hands. The crowd clapped warmly. And one of the old village teachers raised his hand in blessing. "May this place, where letters are born, become a true temple of learning." The ribbon had been cut. The ceremony was over. But something still felt unfinished. Something that wasn't about buildings or crowds. It was personal. Olivia and I walked slowly inside. I reached for the door, but this time, I didn't walk in first. I held it open and let her go ahead. It was such a small gesture, but a few years ago, I wouldn't have even thought to do it. Back then, I didn't know what real respect meant. And that's what had broken her. But now I knew. And it had taken losing everything to learn it. Inside, there was a small room meant to be the school office. Olivia opened the window. Sunlight flooded the space. She sat down on the chair behind the desk. Then she looked at me and asked, "Have you truly changed?" I didn't hesitate. I sat cross-legged on the floor in front of her, like a student. And I said, "I haven't changed, Olivia. I've learned. And a real learner doesn't try to stand taller than others. He learns to bow." She looked straight into my eyes. And for the first time in years, she saw something real. No ego. No excuses. Just the truth. Just honesty. After all these years, someone had finally understood what her silence had always tried to say. And now, her pain, her patience, her sacrifice, all of it had found a name. A place. A future. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I'm no longer afraid of being in a relationship, Ethan, as long as it's built on respect. Not just the label of love." I looked up at her. "I won't promise you a perfect life. I can't. But I will promise this, I'm not the same Ethan who once walked away from you." She smiled. Not a big smile. Just enough to show me, she believed me. Then she handed me a file. "These are the official registration papers for the school," she said. "From today on, this is your responsibility." I held that file in my hands as if it were made of glass. No, more than that. As if it were sacred. Outside, I could hear kids laughing. Birds singing. Sunlight danced across the walls of the school, and for the first time, it didn't look like a building anymore. It looked like something complete. Something right. The past, all of it, the mistakes. The silence. The pain. It was finally behind us. And ahead of us? A new morning. A new path. A new kind of relationship. Not one where I stood above her. Not one where she had to prove herself. But side by side. Equal. That's what true redemption looks like. Not fancy speeches. Not just saying I'm sorry. But action. Real effort. And deep, honest respect. And as we stood there together, I realized. This wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning. Of something far more beautiful. If you connected with this story, please don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and of course, subscribe to our channel for more meaningful stories like this one. Thank you for watching.